fellow travelers, and welcome to The Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your host and guide along the way. And the way we view the world through the lens of showmanship, and what we are looking at these days in this season 4, as I call it, is showmanship and play. We're looking about showmanship and play metaphorically next to each other and seeing what we learn. We've already, in the first few episodes of this season, talked about what showmanship is, and we are now exploring and really getting into the good stuff about what play is. And last episode, we started out talking about rules. One of the 5 criteria of playing is that whenever there is play, whenever there are games, whenever there is play, there are rules. There are rules there, but they can be broken or bent or modified at any given time. But it is the rules that shapes the game. It's the restrictions that we place on each other, on the players. It's the fact that one can do certain things and can't do other things is what makes a game, what makes play a play. So that was the first thing. And then in a little brief interlude, because whenever we talk about play like this, then I am always drawn to James Cars's book, Finite and Infinite Games. And I read aloud the first bit there about what finite and infinite games are. That little quote is just: a finite game is played to win, and the infinite games are played to continue to play. And that is sort of verse 1 for this perhaps unusually written book, which is just written in these sort of little verses almost, with little nuggets of wisdom and how they string together. And an interesting thing for those of you who haven't picked it up and plowed through it since the last episode is that verse number 2, or epistle number 2, says, there is no finite game unless the players freely choose to play. No one can play who is forced to play. It is an invariable principle of all play, finite and infinite, that whoever plays, plays freely. Whoever must play, cannot play. So we see here, of course, for those of us who have listened to, those of us, meaning me as well, listened to the last couple of episodes. I believe we spoke about this in Unpacking Play Part 1, 2 episodes ago. We talked about how the games have to be self-motivated. It has to come from you. You can't force people to play. So you see here that James Cars as well, which is, of course, even though he's writing about games, he is also writing about play. And whenever you look at anyone who has written or thought or whatever about play, you will find these 5 criteria, and you'll get very far in ludology, as some people call it. Ludo means to play, and I guess that is Latin. So you can see here that if you're trying to understand this book of aphorisms that infinite and finite and infinite games is, it can almost seem poetic in a way when you read them, then you will find that you understand quite a bit of the text, because we have gone through these 5 criteria of play, and we'll find that and we'll gain a lot of understanding. And then the final of the 5 criteria that we talked about, which is the 5th and final criteria that we have talked about, that I have singled out, that is about play and imagination. And I just draw the similarities here of how play and how imagination and the improvisational nature of play, how that actually is like life itself. It's like life is so complex and so many things that we just have to make up stuff as we go along. Just like this particular synopsis here. Each time when I'm doing the synopsis, I'm partially trying to remember what I talked about. I'm looking over some brief notes of what I think are key points that I need to hit, but I am jamming it out, imagining that you're listening and trying to understand it, and that we together are trying to pick up the threads of what we talked about last time, and also sort of pointing ahead at where we're going. So improvisation and play is woven into all kinds of play. And we spoke a little bit about the difference between playing a football, for instance, soccer game, and playing an imaginative game like children do, where they are pretending to be family or pretending to be a rock band or whatever kids play these days. Star Wars was very high on the list in my childhood. I don't know if kids still play that. I hope they do, because some of those games that we had, they were awesome. But getting back to the games, sports games have also, although they have more stringent rules than the freely associative and the free play of having your Star Wars figurines and not worrying about what Han Solo did or didn't do in a movie, because a lot of us as kids, we hadn't even seen the movies. It was like, there was one guy, he'd claimed to have seen 3 of them, but we all pretty much knew that he had only seen the 2 Ewok television specials. But be that as it may, the 2 different types of games, they both have a strong element of improvisation. Whether you are improvising within the strict rules of a soccer game or a handball game, or whether you are improvising in very close-knit relation and full negotiation mode with your friends as to what's allowed and what's not allowed within the game. There are always imagination and there is always improvisation in all games everywhere. If there is not, if that's not present, then what we are dealing with, it is, I don't know what it is, but it is not real play. So, with that synopsis out, let's jump back into the world of ideas. And today we are going to explore whether there is any sense to be made from thinking of play as an instinct. And of course, I hope I don't take the excitement out of this episode to say that I think that there's a lot of sense to be made out of that. It'd be weird to start out an episode and saying, is this going to be the case? And then I make a long case and then it isn't that. Anyway, so the fact that play is so fun, that is the criteria number 1. The fact that it makes us feel so good and happy is, at least in part, what makes people so suspicious of its value. We are brought to believe that fun things aren't serious. Where there is laughter, someone is probably slacking off. And you're not working if you're laughing. That statement, that you're not working if you're laughing, that's pretty widespread. But it might be a sort of unspoken assumption. But if you're laughing and having a good time, yet then you probably aren't working, or you're probably not working hard enough, because if you're working slow enough to actually have a good time, then you probably should be paid less. Anyway, yet, as we shall see, this kind of suspicion of the fun and seemingly frivolous is quite unwarranted. Rather, it is a feature that we find in all the kinds of behaviors that are so ubiquitous that they are called instincts. A lot of these instincts, we do them because it feels good to do them. That's how we are guided. When a behavior is universally present in a species, we call it an instinct. When it's something that every little individual, and you can just set your watch by the fact that comes autumn, the geese will fly south. Now maybe that's a Norwegian thing, but anyway, then we call that an instinct. That hasn't explained it, just so we know. That has by no stretch of the imagination explained what an instinct is. Naming something does not mean that we understand it, but we've talked about that before, so we're not going to go into that. Things like hunger, thirst, and the urge to procreate are universal instincts, as we've seen so far. So is play, at least for mammals, and for birds too, really. It's immediately apparent why eating and drinking is a good thing. And the same goes for having babies. Whilst, when it comes to play, the benefits aren't quite as obvious. That this is the case becomes glaringly obvious when we see how kindergartners and kindergartens turn into accelerated learners or the kindergartens, they turn into accelerated learning centers instead of spaces where the very young can interact with other kids of varying ages in play for mutual enjoyment and benefit. This is becomes suspicious. Oh, they're just having fun. Well, they should really be learning while they're having fun, or maybe even not have fun and just learn. Kids get put into school earlier and earlier, and after school, so many of them are enrolled in organized adult-led activities rather than hanging out, getting up to who knows what with other kids. To me, this all points to a lack of understanding of the inherent value of play itself. I mean, I'm no better. My daughter loves going to the choir, and she goes to dance, and she does ceramics, and she loves those activities. So I'm not saying that after-school activities are not just totally awesome. I loved my after-school activities also as a kid. But, yeah, just so that I'm moderating some of these things I say, perhaps it is the fun and apparent frivolous nature of play that makes it so hard to see that it has inherent value in itself. So let's try to get our heads around this joyful aspect of play. Making sense, of course, since it was the first criteria. So, as a species, we love to play, and kids in particular love to play. The main motivator is that it is really fun. Playing makes us feel real good. The answer is as simple and as complicated as that. Playing makes us feel real good. Biologically speaking, there is hardly any better way to motivate an organism to do something than to make it fun and enjoyable. You could argue that it's the importance that has made it enjoyable. The fact that it is important is what has made it enjoyable. If something is very important for a species over a long period of time, chances are that the process of evolution will try to guide you towards it. Eating, drinking, hanging out with good people are all things human beings can derive plenty of pleasure from. And it is no coincidence that these are things that are absolutely also necessary to stay alive. Powerful inclinations are called drives or instincts. They are behaviors that are so important that they are hardwired into us, so that we do them without having to learn them. So, how does evolution, or life itself, guide our behaviors? I'm not talking on a cellular or genetic level here. I'm talking on the level of organisms, like of individual beings like you and me. How is it, or my dog Teddy for that matter, how is it that all mammals play? Evolution does not speak to us in words. It's not like we get words popping up onto our mental screens telling us whether something in the world is good for us or not. Natural selection works on deeper levels than any words. It communicates to us through our bodies, or more concretely, if we can say that about such things, that they are concrete, then we experience these drives and instincts as emotions and feelings. As we go through the world, we feel positively or negatively inclined towards things in our environment, and we want to engage in certain activities and avoid others. And this pleasantness or unpleasantness that we experience in encountering the world is in psychology called valence. The valence of any situation or encounter manifests itself in feelings. Something happens, like a bush of red raspberries, just seeing it can make us feel good, and a pile of dog shit does not. It might seem obvious, yet for a fly it's quite a different matter. And I reckon the multifaceted kaleidoscope fly eye view of a turd would make the fly feel pretty good and happy. And all this might seem a little abstract. What does it even mean that evolution speaks to us? A way I picture it is that when we listen to our feelings and our bodies as they express the valence of a particular thing or situation, I like to picture it like we're listening to our ancestors. Like when we experience something, when we feel something in ourselves in a particular situation, it's like if we're quiet enough, then we can listen to our ancestors and they will tell us whether it is good or bad. They don't whisper to us in words, but through our emotions and feelings. What we feel in encountering something, in a certain sense, is a bodily expressed echo of the wise choices that our ancestors took. It's like the sum of all the choices that benefited them whispers to us today, and they whisper to us through feelings. And when I picture it this way, then it seems to guide me to listen to my emotions and feelings in a different way. So, feelings get a bit of a bad rap sometimes, where you just go, you're just emotional, it just feels that way, or whatever. So when you think of it like that, it's the echoes of the wise choices taken by our ancestors, and they are so important that they echo in us as propensities and feelings. I like that image. And some of these whispers or instincts might of course turn out to be a little out of date, like we love fat and salt and sweet foods, which is a drive that probably needed to have no off switch in Paleolithic Stone Age times, when sweet and sugary treats couldn't be bought on every corner. I certainly feel that bodily whisper from the candy and snack shelf in our pantry as I come home after a show. Whilst if I listened to that whisper from my Paleolithic ancestors and followed their advice every time, I might find myself too large to fit through my rackets. So when I say listen, then I mean listen in a good way. I mean we must take in the whisper and then mediate it and relate it to the reality of the present situation. Of course, there are things here that people argue about how we feel about strangers, how we feel about people that look different, and all this sort of stuff. So there's all kinds of things that might actually be sort of baked in. There was a time in the ancient times when being wary of strangers was a good idea, and now when situations have changed, this might not be the right thing. So just because you feel something, even when you feel it extremely strongly, it might not mean it's the right thing. But then cultivating the ability, that's what we need to do. Cultivate the ability and the virtues necessary to act on and go beyond our instincts and try to grasp them. That this is a pretty good description of our task as developing individuals in communities of persons. We need to learn how to recognize our feelings, but also, question ourselves, why does this feel good? And in a sense, that is what we are doing here. We are going, why does play make us feel so good? Surely there's got to be some value to this that goes beyond just the having a good time as a kid hanging out. There's got to be more to it than that. And another reason for that is that some of the play which is most fun, which all those people who are into circus, hanging on a trapeze, or people who are learning how to stand on a roller bowler on top of a table, or people who are juggling knives or fire, or people who are doing fire eating or fire breathing or sword swallowing, or people who are like a magician who's standing up in front of an audience and says, I now take this ball and place it into my hand, when they absolutely aren't doing that and confidently can stand in front of it. All of this stuff has risk involved. And some of the most fun play that we can have is very risky. So this is a further biological aspect which steel mans the importance of play. Like, why is it important? And part of the reason why that's happening is that many types of play has elements of risk and danger involved. And any dangerous behaviors that can cause serious injury are commonly weeded out by natural selection over evolutionary time, as in we're talking in millions of years. Why? Because if it's just a little bit more of a chance, it's like 1 in 10 people who our ancestors who climbed mountains, if those died, then over time they'll just slowly be weeded out. There'll be less and less chance that people who are inclined to climb. But as it turns out, it's the opposite way. So to make it worse, our risky behaviors seems to have their own particular kind of attraction within play. Like we're pulled towards taking risks in play. And this has been observed in all kinds of animals as well. Players are drawn towards things that challenge them, and there's fun to be had at the edge of our ability. Like when we stretch ourselves towards something that's just beyond what's comfortable. Well, if the demands of a situation lie slightly beyond our skill abilities, yet we manage to rise to the challenge, then we feel a great sense of mastery. This feeling is often, at least for adults, described as being in a flow state. It's what happens when we lose ourselves in something and suddenly find an hour has passed without us knowing it. So I think this flow state might be one way that we adults have renamed play. So risk is to be found everywhere, and part of this thing is like when you're just on the edge, it just feels so good. So there's got to be something positive in that. So let's talk a little bit about flow and this link that maybe flow is how we name adult play. It's like a name that we put on it. Oh, well, we're not playing. We're just like getting into the groove together. We're just jamming. We're just flowing. I'm trying to cultivate a good flow state here. So the concept of flow, as described by the Hungarian-American psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, I don't quite know how to pronounce that, but you can probably Google that. Anyway, despite the difficulty of saying his name, this concept has become very popular. And flow is the experience that we can get when we're actively engaged in an activity where our skills are just on the edge of what we're capable of, in a perfect balance between the challenge of the activity and our ability to accomplish it. And this state is very enjoyable. In these moments, we forget time and space, and we have I'm not one of them, even though I use the language now, what the positive psychologists call the optimal state of experience. And this is what Csikszentmihalyi called flow. He showed how everyone from artists to assembly line workers in factories can be transported to this state of focused contentment by getting caught in the flow. Flow is closely related to what Abraham Maslow called peak experiences. That's Abraham Maslow of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or pyramid of needs, for those who know about that. It's an interesting thing. Anyway, he called it peak experiences. And as I describe the state of flow, it is no doubt sparking a whole lot of links to the state of play. I mean, flow and play seems to be just two different descriptions for the same thing, because I've often thought about this when I'm on tour and my daughter is there for extended periods of time, especially in her younger years. And she only had my wife and myself as her playmates. And in those days, I spent countless hours playing with the mice, Molly and Nalla. Actually, one of those mice, it is a girl, but it's called Nalla. But anyway, and also all of their equally small and cute friends, like the elephant Ellie. And at such times, I know from looking at her that my daughter was in a state of flow, whilst I, for big parts of it, wasn't. After a long play session with her, I often felt tired. I needed some downtime. Sometimes I had a nap, but sometimes I might go to finish some writing on my computer or go back to work on an act I was creating. And in those cases, when I got active, I found that the creative act through it, as I was getting into this creative act of writing or whatever, then this was giving me energy. Even though I felt drained after spending an hour immersed in my daughter's flow, when I got into my flow, all my energy returned as by magic. So our flows, my flow and my daughter's flow, were different, but I think they arise from activities which at their heart were the same. But for that we have different flows, and here again, maybe we see what one of the criteria as well here is that play is self-motivated. And I think flow also has to be self-motivated. If somebody forces you to climb a wall, you might just be absolutely terrified for the whole way, and at the end of it, you're just exhausted. Or if you, whatever it is that you do, if it's pushed on you by someone else, chances are it does not feel good, and you don't reach the flow state. So maybe this is one more level that we can see how they connect. So what I am proposing, it's already been clear, but it is that the experience of flow is the same as the experience a child has when they engage in play. When they're fully engaged in play, they feel what we as adults call flow. And even though I made this connection in my own mind, it turns out, as most things that you ever think of, it's not a new idea. It actually seems to be a broadly held conviction amongst scholars and researchers. So I go to write about it, and then I go, I'll just look a little bit more into this and look a little bit more into that, and I find that I have, like a good Johnny-come-lately who has just invented the light bulb only to find out that it was already made. But at least I yet again find that I have an idea which is seems to be a good idea to have had. People smarter than me have had that idea, so that's very good. So with play, children are processing the world through characters and imagined events in just such a way as being on the edge of their abilities. Time and space disappears. It's like time and space disappears, and for the kids, they get energy rather than lose it when they engage in it. So I'm making the statement, play is flow. So who is the perfect player? As children search for the sweet spot between fear and exhilaration, accidents can happen. That's just the nature of it. Ankles are twisted and arms are broken, and on very rare occasions, there are deaths. Although these things are not as common as one should think, and in today's society we might be inclined to think that when children are left unsupervised, there's bound to be more accidents than with adults present. But as it turns out, when I was looking into this, it turns out this might not be the case. According to Peter Gray, who we've mentioned briefly before and who we're going to continue to talk a lot about today, he says that the chance of getting serious injuries are more common in organized activities like sports, as informal games constantly needs to manage themselves so that the game is enjoyable for all the players, young and older, strong and careful players alike. And we spoke about this before, and how needing to adapt the rules to make it optimal fun for everyone so that the game would continue. So in informal games of sport, like just somebody kicking football in an empty lot or whatever, playing baseball with a stick and a tennis ball, or imaginative games, they can fall apart if somebody is brutishly disregarding his fellow players. If an older, larger boy doesn't take the youngest player's needs into account, he doesn't just offend the kid he knocked over, but the other kids will notice and remember that this kid does not conform, or perhaps doesn't even understand the social rules of play. Of course, nobody will be putting it in those terms, but they'll just be going like, this dude doesn't get it. Playing well and having fun really are more important than winning. This is from Peter Gray, that playing well and having fun really are more important than winning. And this is like a meta rule that goes as a red thread through all the games played by any group of kids. As long as we're having fun and as long as we play well, then it's always more important than winning. And this is, although said by another guy, this is just another way of talking about infinite games that James Cast talked about. Certain kids are great players and gets invited into every play opportunity. Every kid wants to be in as many games as possible, so they play in such a way that everyone in the game is having as much fun as possible. And this means that they tend not to push other players beyond their limits. And when littler kids strive towards the edge of their ability, an older kid might step in closer to catch them if they fall. And if there are adults nearby, this is kind of odd, whether they're paying attention or not, the older kids quite often then just defer the responsibility of the other kid's safety to the adults. This can happen in schools and stuff where, like, in a scenario like this, where there are adults present, even if they're just walking around on their phone, not paying attention, the older kids don't have the chance to step up and to feel a responsibility. And in scenarios like these, chances are the younger kids might get hurt. But further, the older kid loses out on the sense of responsibility for them. So it seems to me to be a sort of non-trivial point that it's important to let them be on their own to need to step up. Yeah, I mean, I know it from myself. Chances are if I'm out with my wife and my daughter and you're at a playground or whatever, and one is engaged, all of a sudden I have disengaged and I am reading a book on my phone or whatever before I know it. And it's like I defer the responsibility for engaging my daughter. And, I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. So anyway, back to the informal game of football, which is run entirely by kids and operated by a different sense of responsibility than an adult-led sports game. Using football here, because there was a lot of football being played when I was a kid as well. Football is the European style, as in soccer. But it's very different, these games, than the formal games. Because in the formal games, following the rules of sports, you might be egged on by coaches or parents and general culture that the aim is to win. This is, of course, the stated and obvious goal of any game of sport, practically. In such games, each player is expected to constantly push as hard and as far as the rules allows. In such circumstances, the chances of injury actually goes up. And this is not to say that the coaches of sports for kids are not super dedicated to the safety and well-being of their players, because I believe and I know that they are. I know such people, and they're tremendous in giving so much of their own time and giving so much to so many kids. But what I'm saying is that when the framework of the game, from informal to formal, from play to sport, then as that happens, it changes the stakes. And the stakes are changed and the rules become a little less flexible. And excellence in sport, the features of a good individual player are different from the features of a good player of informal games. Like being a good sports player is slightly different in many subtle and important ways from being good at imaginative games, for instance. Another indication of this difference is, according to something I found on something called the Nationwide Children's Hospital in America. I found it on their website, and there it is just a list of there's an increase of overuse injuries, like stress fractures, tendinitis, and wear and tear of joints, historically common in adult recreational athletes. They are now often being seen in children, more often. And these kind of injuries were rarely seen in children who spent more time engaging in free play. And if you Google Nationwide Children's Hospital in America, and you'll find their website and find these things. I don't know if you're interested in this sort of stuff. Maybe I'll post a link to this particular thing if you want to check my sources. It's not the best of sources, but I was just looking for finding some additional kind of backup to some of Peter Gray's claims. I'll talk more about him afterwards. But if the aim of the game becomes to win and not just to feel real good and have fun playing, then maybe a level of aggression can sneak in and push us to extend ourselves just that little bit too far beyond one's ability. bodies of kids, not quite finished, not quite ready for the full push of the muscles or the quick turns on the knees or whatever. But what we're dealing with here again, if you haven't already heard that little metaphorical bell ring up, so to make these connections again, that in terms of James Carse, then we change the game from infinite to finite. When we do this, as we make a game serious, and as we make if the aim of the game is to win, then it becomes a finite game, because as he says, a finite game is played to win, says Carse. So these kinds of games have rules which clearly defines who wins and loses. And by necessity, a game of sports creates winners and losers, which makes finite games a kind of power play. Somebody will win, somebody will lose. It's not about just playing the game. We say that, but, it's also about winning. So they're instrumental activities in that they're being played to win, not to participate. So not to have fun with your friends. And this ever been an instrumental activity, that it's not being just played to be played, but it's being played to win, or played to, whatever, for anything. That's also now. We see that's breaking some of the criteria as well. So, of course, you might have fun, but it's not enough to have fun. The game of sport is in a certain sense played not just for the players, but also for an audience. And the winning of the game is validated and elevates the status of the players because it's witnessed by others. The winning and losing is done under the watchful eye of a referee and an audience, who all also know the exact boundaries of the rules, and they all make sure that the teams and the players remain within the boundaries of the rules. Whilst in an informal game of soccer on a vacant lot in the neighbourhood, this arguably is an infinite game which is played for the purpose of continuing the play. There are no winners and no losers in this game. The game is endless and ongoing. At least this is possible in these places. It's fueled and guided by authentic and direct interactions between the players without any clear rules written down. What is right or wrong is worked out in the shared experience of the moment. 2 jackets on the ground on one side and one pole in the other one, and a tree on the other one. You're trying to make the goals the same size on the different sides, but there's bad terrain in front of one, and rules are negotiated. Oh, well, you guys get to play on this side first, and we have the wind against, and then we do. So maybe a rule is broken on a free kick, but if it's done in a funny enough way so that everyone laughs, it might just be implicitly understood that it was so fun that that's now allowed, and we all know it, because it was just so silly or whatever. So everyone might know that this is not the way that soccer normally is played, but since the true aim of the infinite game is to have as much fun as possible so that the game will go on, it's also clear to everyone that the breaking of the soccer rules is allowed when it furthers the infinite game. If it's fun, if it's like authentic and exciting, then why not change it like that? All of a sudden it's like there's a... Yeah, anyway, not going to make up any more details here. So everyone is a participant in the infinite games, which is why in informal sports in the neighborhood or in any free play, you don't have kids sitting on the outside watching. I mean, you can have that, but that's often not a healthy sign. For the purpose of the infinite game is not to watch players follow rules. It is to participate and create the rules of the game as the game emerges. It's the little changes and the little pushes and the little additions that we do to it. That is like what the real game was. It's like that's why you had to be there yesterday to play that game, not just because team won, but because that was the day when the guy did this thing, and then he cracked a big fart and we all laughed, and then he kicked the ball in the goal when everyone was laughing, and then that was the day you had to be there. Whatever. All right. It's going in a puerile, childish way here. But anyway, as free play becomes sport, the play changes to a, if we can say it like that, say into a lesser or a smaller game. It's finite as opposed to infinite. And in this change towards rules and winning and losing, it doesn't surprise me that serious injuries do become more common. All that said, whether one plays freely or get into informal or get into formal sports, getting lost in a game and risky behavior of any kind, there is always an increase in chance of injury. I did not play football as a kid, and a huge part of my childhood I ran around the neighborhood completely unsupervised with kids of all ages from our street and the surroundings, and I can vouch for the pull and excitement of risky games. The pull towards risk was certainly real in my childhood. When I was a kid, there was a period when there was a house that was being built immediately next to our playground, and that year, or like it felt like an eternity, I think we didn't really spend any time at the playground except for when we were waiting for the workers to finish up for the day. Getting home from school, going over, and then you'd like pretty much just sit there because the playground that we had just paled by comparison, and now we just wanted to get in there. And as soon as they left, the building site became our playground, amongst nails and forgotten tools and chopped off bits of woods with armor steel protruding from the unfinished concrete, from slabs and walls. We had the time of our lives, and we were not allowed to be there. Our parents forbade it, and of course the builders hated that we played and moved whatever tools and materials they had left outside of their lockable office caravan. But we did it, and we loved it, and we survived. If anyone hurt themselves, it became a matter for the whole gang to solve. We needed to comfort and improvise a bandage for a grazed knee, as going home to the parents would lead to the whole gang getting in trouble, as parents have an uncanny knack of working out that you've done something that you shouldn't. At least mine had, which might be related to how bad I was at hiding my guilt, but I don't know. The thing is, when any behavior carries a risk, there's a good chance that over long stretches of evolutionary time, evolution will just weed it out. Natural selection will remove any players whose risky behavior in any way inhibits their ability to survive and procreate from, you just get evicted from the gene pool because you're not there to do it. And that's it too. It's like, when do we get kids? No. When do we get kids? Well, not when we are kids. In fact, as we've mentioned before, the biological definition of childhood is often that it is before sexual maturity. After sexual maturity, you can have your own kids. So that's why you are evicted from the gene pool. You are still playing, still doing risky things. You're a kid. You haven't had kids yet. So if you're evicted from the gene pool, if you get injured so that you don't get a mate because you lose your legs or you die or whatever, then chances are you won't end up procreating, and then hence your gene lineage will not be whispering through feelings to your great grandchildren's feelings, So there you go. Think about that. So, if play truly was only a frivolous pastime without any real-world benefits, the little risk of death or crippling injury would eventually weed out the playful behavior. And the only thing that can change this is that there is an additional positive thing which outweighs the negative thing, so that even though a few people go south or die, then or gets evicted from the gene pool, it still has an overall positive influence or whatever. So let's look at finally look a little bit at some of the aspects of the play instinct. For humans and animals, for that matter, but mainly humans here, doesn't have to learn to play. But the games we play, what and how we play, is forever changing. Our repertoire of play grows as we get older and reach the many sort of developmental milestones. at some early point, the human baby might find the game of putting shells into a plastic cup and then pouring them back out to be the epitome of fun. Like, say you're an 11-month-old girl on holiday at a beach in Italy, as observed in real life, not under strict conditions, but yours truly saw this happening, where just for hours, just putting the shells, at great difficulty, putting the shells into the little cup, and then once that's done, being pretty chuffed about herself, pouring it back out. Yet, 3 months later, the games, the shell game, totally boring, and the games she was enthusiastic about were centered around walking and balancing. The games change, and the degrees of freedom that comes through the growth of our physicality and our mental abilities as they continue to grow, more degrees of freedom come. And the thing that remains the constant is the drive to play with any and everything. The playful approach is the strongest ancestral whisper. All right. I hope the ancestors are whispering loudly in your ears, through your feelings, and I hope that they are whispering. Tell your friends about the way of the showman. I think that should make you feel pretty good to do that. And if you don't want to tell your friends, maybe you've already told all your friends. Why don't you go on to iTunes or anywhere where podcasts are, you find your podcast, and leave us an excellent review. It's been a while since anyone left a good review. In fact, there's been a while since anyone left any reviews. In fact, it's completely connected to me stopping asking for it. So be the first one in a while to go up there and say, hey, The Way of the Showman is the way to go. Check it out on your podcasting. Read the comments below. And then you get crazy poems like this coming up. So write a review. It would be awesome for me to view and see. And until next time, take care of yourself and those you love. And I hope to see you along the way.